practical use of frameworks to achieve better outcomes is the topic I'm talking about today. First off, a little bit about me. So, as Estelle said, I'm an IT business partner at Rolls-Royce. And as Jeremy said, recently in the role coming from higher education before. So about 2 months into Rolls-Royce now, but before that I was at Loughborough University for about 18 years and doing business partnering for about 8 years there. As well as that, I do BRM Institute community work, such as events like this and writing articles and getting interviewed by Estelle about things. Just generally trying to promote BRM and get everybody to be aware of the Institute and best practices and things like that. And then lastly, sometimes I'll take annual leave from my day job and, much to my wife's disappointment, spend it training BRMs for IT winners, generally doing BRMP or CBRM. And if you've done both of those and you want to do the MBRM, let me know, because I can mentor and help you through that process as well and try and get some more people up to that MBRM level. So if you're interested in that, just drop me a line and I'll help guide you through it all. So, frameworks. What is a framework? Well, the definition of a framework is it's a supporting structure around which something can be built. In our case, I'd guess that would be a successful BRM function is what we're trying to build. So we're looking at the frameworks that can underpin that, help us become successful and achieve those better outcomes, as the title of the presentation said. So what frameworks are available to us? Well, there's obviously the BRM Institute's frameworks. All of that's within their body of knowledge. That's ever evolving. They've just gone from BRMP version 1 to BRMP version 2. So there is kind of like an updated version now. The CBRM is still based off the same as it was before, but they are in the process of updating that as well. So it's ever evolving and ever updating. So within that body of knowledge, to get access to that, I think you have to be a BRM Institute member, but the membership's fairly cheap, I think. So, but there might be an explorer option where you can have a look for free as well. So that's a great place to start for us BRMs. Also, because I think the majority, if not all of us, are IT BRMs, there's obviously a lot of IT frameworks out there. ITIL, very big in the UK and Europe, not so big in America and that side of things. But it's a great place because it's got this kind of broad concept across the ITIL framework. There's also COBIT for management and governance of IT. Then you've got things like Agile. Sophia is skills framework for information age. That's all around job roles and responsibilities. And then you've got different practices coming in like DevOps and things like that. So we've got lots of different frameworks which are available for us to use. So which framework should we use? Well, the BRM body of knowledge is the most relevant for us as BRMs. So that's probably the best starting point, but we shouldn't ignore the others. Because we work closely with project management office, enterprise architects, delivery solution architects, all these different people, they might be concentrating on some of the other frameworks. So what we need to do is we need to understand them, empathize with them, and understand what frameworks they're using, the language they're using, at what level they're using it, and try and work out how we can work with them so we don't have any gaps and we don't have any kind of overlap and we're not both doing the same thing but calling it something slightly different. So it's important to have that broad understanding of all these other frameworks as well. And what's the benefit of doing all this framework business? Well, the idea is we get this common understanding. So we know who the roles are, the responsibilities of those roles, what the process is they're working around. Like I said before, having that kind of common language, so we're all calling the same things. Like some people call stakeholders, actors, business partners, different names for all the kind of same things. So we've got to make sure we get the language correct. And ultimately, if we get that framework in, we got everything and common understanding, then hopefully we'll have a successful function that works. So how do we understand all these frameworks? Well, at the beginning, we can start off with the BRM body of knowledge. Like I said, should be able to get access to that, get a visibility on it. You can also get trained. BRMP, as I said, foundation course gives you that broad understanding of it all. CBRM gives you that practical application knowledge of a lot of the framework tools as well. Then you can do things like ITIL Foundation to get that broad understanding. So yeah, where you can, get those training courses, get that broad understanding, or try and learn off your peers and other people you work with as well. If you've got enterprise architect who's highly skilled in TOGAF, ask them to give you a broad understanding of the frameworks that they use and the language and the processes. Once we've got that broad understanding, we then need to pick and choose the bits which are going to add value to us. Now, this might be a case of focusing on problem areas which we're trying to solve. So that might be that we don't do demand management very well, we don't do benefits realization very well. There might be all these different areas we want to focus on where we know it's a problem we could do better. If that's the case, then we go off to the frameworks, look in the body of knowledge for the keywords and read what they say about it, talk to our peers and understand what they use from Prince2, TOGAF, DevOps, Agile, and try and work out between us, what's the best approach? How are we going to pick and choose the right elements to use from these different frameworks? Then, once we've got it working, we then might want to scale it up and build on that success. Or ultimately, you might have something that works, but it's just not formalized. So it works really well, but it's not really documented and the framework's not really kind of put down on paper, in which case we might want to formalize the approach, because as people come and go out the organization, even a change of CIO at the top, it's good for them to see, look, this is how we work, this is how we're delivering value to the organization, this is the framework we're following and the processes and the people involved. So one good way to do it is to kind of map it out. And I really like this diagram here. This one's from the CBRM course. So this has business relationship management right in the center of the organization, exactly where we should be, in the center of everything, showing the different functions and teams around us and what are the inputs and outputs with them. So here, what it does is it shows that what we've got feeding into architecture, what we're expecting to come out of them, whether that's kind of information, spreadsheets, tools, updates, guidance, advice, and what are they giving us? Are they giving us updates and things? But by mapping out all these inputs and outputs, we can start to get an understanding of where we are, where we're working, what frameworks might be needed around it. And like I said, the PMO office at the top right there might be working very strict to kind of Prince2 methodologies and be thinking, we give you our milestones and all the information and progress in this format on these timescales, because that's the framework we're working towards. So we've got to understand that. So when we're implementing any frameworks or changes to our frameworks, it's important to get all the relevant stakeholders on board. So get them involved early, make sure that they've got some buy-in and ownership of these frameworks that we're developing. The worst thing we could do is go away, create it all in isolation, document it all, and then throw it over at them and say, this is the new way of working. We've done our research and you've now got to do it this way. We've got to do it together collaboratively. We also then want to co-develop the approach and the implementation of it. So yeah, we're not working in isolation. We are aware there are other frameworks. We are going to work together and adapt and meet in the middle sometimes. We also need to remember, we're not always the ones who will have to do everything. Like the classic example is kind of benefits realization. The PMO office might think that that is their job and their role, and they have to do the benefits realization because they've delivered the project. If that's the case, that's fine. We just want to ensure it's all being done. And if it's not being done, we might want to step in and do it. We might want to take ownership. But as long as it's happening and it's successful, we don't want to be trying to kind of steal and land grab different functions off different people. As the BRM, we just want to ensure that the organization is being successful and getting what it needs. So that was a bit of a whistle-stop tour of some of the kind of theory and my thinking around frameworks. But now the juicy bit, the bit that everybody really likes to see, is the kind of real-world examples. And as I say, when I do my training courses, I always like to try and relate the training and the theory back to what it's like in the real world. So I picked a few bits to go through today. An annual maturity assessment, which I've done before in the past. This is great to kind of baseline where you are as a BRM function with different business units. And when you've got that baseline, you can put an annual year-long improvement plan in place. You can track the progress. Then you could do the assessment again a year later and hopefully see some improvement. It's a bit of like giving yourself some KPIs and things like that to show that you're performing well and you're growing and maturing as a function. Really good for senior management to see, because you can do it and then you can produce nice, pretty graphs and nice report at the end of the year to show them how you've been successful. The next one is capability roadmaps used for strategic planning. This is something which I inherited at Rolls-Royce. I didn't create it there, it was already there when I joined. So Pez probably knows more about this than me, but I'm just going to talk very quickly through because it's great and it's a good example where it's a bit of BRM frameworks, bit of enterprise architecture frameworks, bit of strategic planning, capability road mapping, all kind of bundled into one. The third one is a competency assessment. And this is great for looking at your team and the different skills that they've got and how you can use other members of your BRM team to help uplift their skills and mentor each other and help each other grow personally for your personal kind of competencies. And again, starting at Rolls-Royce, it's a really good one for me because I don't know much about aeroplanes. I know lots about BRM, and then there's another new starter who knows lots about aeroplanes and is new to BRM. So by working very closely with him, we're helping each other build up our competencies and grow and get more improvements as well. And then lastly, benefits realization reporting. Like I said, doing that value delivery check, something everybody always struggles with. And I've seen it work successfully in pockets before at Loughborough University. We're doing bits now at Rolls-Royce. So just to go through that very briefly as well. So the first one, this annual maturity assessment. So this tool, I built it in Excel. It's free to download. It's on the IT Winners website. If somebody wants to post a link to it in the chat, if Gary's here, he might be able to find it. If not, if you can't find it, message me after. I can just email you a copy. Essentially how this works is you kind of look at all the different areas where BRM works, all the different functions. Then you think about some specific kind of questions like, is the BRM at the strategy table with their business partners? And then you use this scale at the top to try and give it a score from 0 to 5. And I've given the scoring lots of different variables. So you can think about roles, processes, how frequently it happens and things like that. And by using those scales, you can then give it a score and put it on there. And there's lots of different tabs and lots of different questions. And it's all based off BRMP version 1 and being at that, what they call the level 5 strategic partner, the most mature, successful function you can be. Now, what I suggest doing is if you do want to use this, then just rename and change everything to put it in the language that your organization and your BRMs will understand. So, for example, at Rolls-Royce, we would change value harvesting to be probably value realization, servicing, service management, maybe exploring might be innovation. So we might change some of those key areas down the left. Again, then the different tabs of strategic partnering, business intelligence, and business transition management, things like that, might tweak those. And then even these statements, the BRM is at the strategy table with their business partners. Or first, the thing I would do is change that to be the IT business partners are at the strategy table with their key senior stakeholders, for example, because that's the terminology we use at Rolls-Royce. So by all means, grab this template, but definitely change the language, change the questions, make them relevant to you. How I've built it as well, you have 4 business units you type in at the beginning, and then it compares and contrasts between the 4 business units. If you want to do more business units, you'll have to go in the back end and fiddle with all the code, and yeah, good luck with that. At the end of doing that assessment, like I said, there's a kind of a summary page where it does a bit of stats on it, showing you some percentages, and I got a bit of a heat map going on here to try and show what we need to focus on improving for the next year. And it might be a particular business unit cutting across is a particular shade of red, which means we want to focus on them, or it might be an area. So here the competency of powerful communications and business transition management looks a bit low. So we might say we want to put in some initiatives to work on that. Again, value harvesting is low, and the lowest business unit is HR, but only just, only by 1%. The heat map's a bit off there because it's, yeah, there's only 1% in it. But yeah, it gives you a rough idea and it makes you think and ask these questions. There's 2 ways to do this assessment as well. You can do it on your own and just put your mind in the mindset of, does that happen with me in the business? Or if you've got a really good relationship with the business and they understand what you're trying to do, you can sit down with them and kind of jointly agree the scores on the different questions and then jointly agree the kind of action plan to improve it over the year. So initially I've started off just doing it on my own, but then yeah, once you've got it in and it's moving, and if the senior stakeholder you're working with is understanding of the role and what you're trying to achieve, it might be good to share and sit down and do it together with them. So that's one of the tools that came out of one of the frameworks from the BRM Institute. Now, this is the capability roadmap, strategic plan on a page from Rolls-Royce. No details in here. I've had to blank it all out for intellectual property and privacy reasons, but essentially it's a good template for you to show. So we did one of these. We got them going for each business unit. And at the top, we have the business unit name, and then we have the business capabilities, which are the core capabilities which they need to run as a business, and then the digital capabilities underneath that. We've then got an investment roadmap for the next 5 years, and we've got a vision statement, and then some key themes around that vision, and then some more technical applications and foundations which might be in place or in plan. And the reason why some of this is shaded in purple is because some of it is delivered by IT and some of it is delivered by an external function. It might be an external supplier, or it might be a part of the business themselves, but there's a close link and it's two distinct areas. So we're trying to show who's doing what when, where's the investment over the next 5 years. So these are the kind of key projects. The ones in dark blue are kind of a bit more confirmed, and then light blue might be very kind of aspirational, or we just don't know yet, looking that far forward for those particular strategic themes. But we've built these up now with the business, and we've co-developed them with the enterprise architects as well. So it's kind of jointly created and owned by the business, the IT business partner, and the enterprise architect. So everybody's knows and is in agreement of what the business is trying to achieve through their vision, what's a brief theme and description around that in a bit more detail of their objectives they're going to try and achieve over the next 5 years, and then what capabilities and digital capabilities and projects are we going to be delivering to help support it. So this is our kind of starting point. Then that goes off to get investments and planning and gets put into pipelines and things like that. But ultimately, we've always got this one strategy on a page, capability and digital capability roadmap to use going forward between us. So it's been a really good tool for me to dive into when I've been starting Rolls-Royce, and found it to be very successful. So that's another great one. And no example how different frameworks and different stakeholders are collaborating together to create these tools. Next, I've got the competency assessment. So they've recently changed this. This is from the BRM Institute. This is the new BRMP version 2's version of it, because it's slightly changed. But essentially, they have 4 different levels of competency. And then what that means is you try and work out who's going to kind of coach and mentor the other people in the team to try and lift up their levels of competency. So you might have junior BRMs or new BRMs to the business, like myself at Rolls-Royce, who've got very low level industry knowledge. And then you're getting somebody with high industry knowledge, like I said, to try and lift up that capability up, that competency up. Other things might be, are they good communicator? Are they good at presenting? Are they good at, influencing, persuading, negotiating? And if you've identified something where they're slightly lower, then it might be a training course, it might be a mentoring thing, it might be buddying up with somebody. But essentially, it's a bit like your kind of annual professional development review you might do as part of your business and growth and identifying training needs and things, but with a BRM focus to be done within your team to really help kind of bring everybody up to the right level and get all your peers helping each other. So this competency assessment framework looks like this, but then after that, you need the kind of columns for the different areas that you work in. So at Rolls-Royce, we've got something we call the 6 services, which is now the 5 services, which are the 5 different kind of key areas we work in around kind of investment planning and demand management and communications and things like that. Many other BRM teams have the same kind of thing. So Loughborough University, we had a similar thing. We put it on our website with a different kind of button for the different areas that we use. So if you think about it in those terms of what do we do, can we break it down to 5 or 6 bits and then try and work out where the skills are in those areas and what we can do to help lift people up. Lastly, benefits realization. So benefits realization, like I said before, sometimes the PMO office do it, sometimes the BRM office do it, sometimes the business just does it on their own independently. But what we need to do is make sure that we are working between us, the PMO, and the business generally to help develop this and get it in place. Ideally, what we want is a robust benefits realization report for senior management. How I've used it before and use it is basically the governing body which approves the project or initiative to have the money and the resources allocated to it to deliver what it needs to deliver, to go back to that same board with this report 6 months or a year down the line to say that project you approved 2 years ago did actually meet and deliver all the benefits that it needed. So we need to say what the project was, what was the outcome we were trying to get, what was the benefit we wanted to achieve, and what timescale. And then we need to say who's accountable for that benefit, who's responsible for checking it, what was actually realised out of it, and most importantly, what are the lessons learned? Can we optimise that value and get more out of it? Did we massively overestimate and we only delivered half of it? You know, can we go back, learn things, and then adjust for the next project that comes along? So it should help feed back through into demand management. So we do demand management better. It might feed back into project management and it help improve that as well. So ultimately, it's a really important thing to do, but a lot of companies and organizations don't do it. Too busy delivering the deliverables than checking and going back and checking the value. I've heard people say, we're not going to check the value, we're going to trust that it's been done. You know, we trust you, we're a partnership. You say you're getting the value, we'll presume you're going to get it. But ideally, if we can, we want to do this lessons learned. So in summary, frameworks are great to give everyone a common understanding and get a common approach. The most appropriate elements from various frameworks can be used together, so don't be afraid to mix and match, but get all the stakeholders agreed early, document the approach, make sure it's all written down on paper. If it's on paper and everyone's seen it and said that that is right, then that's a great point, you know, then if they want to adjust it, you can. Adjust the language and the scope of the framework elements to fit your organisation. Don't be afraid to review and adjust the frameworks. If you've spent months agreeing this framework and this tool and getting it in place, you know, it was quite painful to do, but you have to go back and readjust it and optimize it as well. Because ultimately, frameworks advance, like I said, BRMP 1 has moved to BRMP version 2. There'll be now new elements in there, new bits we can take out, add back into our organization and tweak and adjust things to basically, as it said at the beginning, achieve better outcomes. So that's the end of my presentation. So I will kill my share so I can see all your lovely faces again and see if we've got any questions in the chat.
There's lots of praise for your presentation there, Jeremy. With regards to questions, people were asking where they could download the RSOAP, and I think Hannah gave us the details of the acronym there, and Martin very kindly put a link into IT Winners in the chat. With regards to questions, the team have started to call out risk tech debt as part of our reporting, the risk then mapped onto the investment roadmaps. Less of a question, but an endorsement by Pez there. So we have an emerging capability roadmap similar to this. That's from JAG, called Business on a Page. Max, go for it.
Hi, Jeremy. How you doing?
Hi, Max.
Good to see you. Very good presentation on the competency model side of things. Do you see that as a management activity, or is that more of a development kind of conversation with each of the BRMs?
Yeah, I see it more as a development one. So it's kind of like you do with your line manager to say, you know, these are the skills and training courses I want to go on, or skills I want to develop, but to do it as a team and kind of share and be a bit more open about it, as long as people are willing. Obviously, some people, it's a bit sensitive to say I've only got a basic knowledge of this, you know, some people might be a bit adverse to sharing it at that level, but if people are comfortable and willing to share it all amongst the team, because then you can start buddying up and mentoring each other and lifting it up. But if they're not, then just directly with your line management as like a kind of a PDR type annual process.
Cool, great. Thanks very much.
That's great, thank you. Oh, we've got a hand up here. Whose hand up is it?
Question. I just spotlight her.
I thought I'd put my hand up as well because there's quite a few of us on the call. But thank you, Jeremy. That was really useful. I'm curious as to with the frameworks and bringing all of the frameworks together and different teams, such as the architecture team. So myself and a colleague on here, our role sits in architecture. But I wondered, I'd like to hear a little bit more about how you went about that conversation about bringing those frameworks together and doing that jointly. And any challenges that you had and how you overcame them.
Yeah, so obviously, because it can be quite difficult because you are almost negotiating a kind of a midpoint sometimes between two different frameworks, because, you know, your architects might be very, we do TOGAF and this is how it works and we're not changing and all the rest of it. So yeah, you have to just be open and honest and transparent about it, as in we're trying to improve as a BRM function. We interface with you, the architects, in this way by providing these, you know, planning documents, and you're giving us, you know, solutions or whatever, working out those inputs and outputs between you, and then saying, right, so our framework and theory from the BRM Institute, for example, says we might want to do it in this way. How does that work with you? You know, and what does your framework say? And then just like I say, just having that conversation and trying to work out between you the best way to work together using all that best practices from frameworks. And like I say, yeah, it can be a bit tricky because some people aren't as nice and open and transparent as us BRMs, and some people do want to kind of keep the cards closer to their chest and say, no, we'll just tell you the information you need to know, go away, you know. But you got to just try and break them down, buy them biscuits, that'll do.
Thank you. Great.
No
Great answer. Thanks so much, Jeremy. This is and as you say, you really are very open and honest. And you know, I noticed on the you know, you'll share anything you know, and that's absolutely wonderful. I think Martin's waiting in the wings there for a question. You ready to come up, Martin?
Yeah. I think it's, I suppose, how long has your career been in a BRM? Because I've been it 3 years, and it kind of was a role I've never even knew existed in the, you know, it was always, from my perspective, I were a developer, but then the next stage would be IT manager. But this role, you know, it's been brilliant. But then so we did the BRMP certification this year, and then, but then I don't mean a mountain as in, but like what you showed there is the role of BRM is really mature at Borg Warner, where I am, and we've got loads around the world. But even them documents that you're showing, we don't really have that kind of framework in there as such. It's just I think the role is just there. But this whole, you know, the assessments and the, you know, that's what we're trying to do. Like that's what I mentioned about the relationship strategy on the page, and then the competencies. I'm just curious, as you know, how long have you been a BRM?
Yeah, so I've been BRM for about 8 or 9 years, because I did it at Loughborough for about 8 years, I think, and now I've just moved to Rolls-Royce. And at Loughborough, it was kind of I was IT techie as well, and it was kind of half the time build servers, half the time manage relationships, and it started off like that, and then it just grew and grew. And yeah, I find a lot of people are like that, where the function's there, it works, but it's not formally documented and it's not actually put on paper. So at Loughborough, found it really helped to draw swim lane diagrams of the processes to say, right, pre-project process. So before it becomes a project, this is what happens. Somebody talks to us, we draw up a rough plan, we go and talk to this person, this person, this person, build a business case, take it to the governance committee, gets approved, then it goes to the project management office. But by drawing those swim lanes, everybody who's mentioned on there, we take it to them and say, is that how you think it works? You know, do you want to tweak it or adjust it? And then we got it approved, and then you get it documented, and then it's set in stone almost as 90% of the time we're going to follow this. There will be exceptions, we know, but, you know, it means that we'll always keep these people in the loop during this process. Because by not having it documented and it just happening, the tricky bit is when, like me joining Rolls-Royce, a new person comes in, how do I do it? They've got to learn just off following people around and learning. They've got nothing on paper to look at. And also, change in leadership is often one of the key points. CIO people change. What's this BRM function? I didn't have that in my last place. What do you actually do? Yeah. You know, and you've got to kind of resell it to them again. So it's really good to have it kind of documented as this is what we do and this is how we do it.
Yeah, we have that. Recently, we accompanied a company called Delphi, and that they were very similar. The BRM role is not one thing they had, so there was some friction, you know, from the I suppose the roles and responsibilities that they now do compared to what they usually did. So no, there was some, but then others have embraced it. We do have a good, really strong PMO framework. It's just some of the you know, the tools to say competencies and then other things like that. So it's just great to take back. Yeah, I'll be bugging my superiors with some of these documents and stuff now. So they're always they're always ready for me on these events to come back and, you know, not question them, but, you know, just bring other stuff to the table. I think it's good. Exactly. It's good to get it. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah.
Thanks so much for coming up. That's taken us right to the bridge, like right on time. That just never happens. That's amazing, because we've got a break in there. And then is it time to get the cakes out yet, Jag, from Cutter and Squidge, if you've actually ordered them from there? Can we get the cakes out? Can we?
Absolutely.